All right, then. So now let's go ahead and start understanding. Let's try to understand how the grid system work. So I'm just going to delete all these things. And here I'm going to delete all these things. I'm just going to say grid hyphen basic. Then inside this, I'm just going to create an item, which is going to be the multiplier of 9 different items. So then I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and oops, 7, 8, 9. All right. So let's say this changes. I'm just let's say this changes over here also. So now here, let's target this grid basics. Copy this, paste it, just like the same way, width as 75 percentage, and height, of course, it's going to be so padding 20 pixels, border 1 pixel, solid gray color, gray. Save it. That's how it looks. Then for this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say display, which is going to be as a grid. Then I'm going to divide it into 3 equal columns. So grid template columns, which is going to be repeat. Using the repeat function, we can create 3 columns with 1 frame each, which is going to be 3 equal columns, right? And I'm going to increase the gap between them as a 10 pixels. So right after here, I'm going to target the item, which is, in case it's going to be background, as a gray color, something like that, adding as 20 pixels, and border radius as 10 pixels, something 20, something like this. Okay, so this is the default the way to create 3 different equal columns. Okay, so think about it, that you want to keep a fixed column along with the flexible columns. So let's say I want to keep the first columns as 200 pixels and the rest needs to be flexible, or all the 3 columns needs to be 200 pixels, 200 pixels, and 200 pixels, something like that. In that situation, you can define it in this way. Or first column needs to be 200 pixels, the rest needs to be 1 frame and 2 frame, something like this. Okay, so you can play around with these options and everything. Okay, so now let me revert this into 3 frames, something like this. Now let's say for this, I'm going to create the item 1. So the item, now let's understand how does the column spanning will work. So over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say dot item 1, which is going to grid column span. So I'm going to make sure it's going to access 2 different columns. Now we can see the first one is accessing the 2 different columns, right? And it's the same way if you want to access this into grid rows, 2 different rows as well as, so span, which is going to be, now it's accessing the 2 different rows. Okay, so now wherever you want this, let's say I want to add the item 1 over here. Now we can see it's accessing the same. Okay, so this is up to you, so you can play around with these options wherever you want. You can just put it them and you can play around with that options. So by this way, you can create a complex grid structure, right? So this is just by understanding the spannings, the rows, number of rows and number of columns spanning. So let's try to understand the grid areas. So I'm going to comment all these things. Comment it. Currently it is going to be empty, so I'm just going to say area grid area, and inside this I'm just going to have a header with a box style, header box, which is going to be the header. Then I'm going to have a nav.box style, which is going to be a nav bar. Then I'm going to have a main tag with the box style, which is going to be the main tag. Then I'm going to have the footer tag with the box style, which is going to be the footer, right? So now we have all those stuffs and everything. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this dot grid area, which is basically going to access the 75 percentage of the width, and padding, which is going to be the 20 pixels. Let's say padding 20 pixels, height, which is going to be auto, something like this. Okay. Now inside here, display, which is going to be the grid, and all I have to do is to first I need to set the grid area name for header, navbar, main. So for header, I'm going to say grid area, which is going to be header itself. Okay, just like the same way I'm going to say for nav, main, and footer. So for this nav and for this main and for this footer. Now everything is inside in the center location over here, which is not placed properly. So what I need to do is I just need to say grid template areas. So using the areas, I need to align them. So let me break it up over here. And right after here, I'm going to create so header and header. It needs to take something like that. Now you can see it's accessing the complete length. Then right after that, I need to bring sidebar, or what we can do is for this, I can keep as the, okay, now I can keep it as the sidebar. So I can say in sidebar, and I can say main tag. Then right after that, I need to bring footer and footer, something like that. Okay, but it is not the, okay, I think that is an issue. Header grid area, which is going to be the grid area, nav grid area, which is going to be the sidebar. Okay, so now let's define the grid template columns, which is going to be let's say 200 pixels and one frame. Like I need only two columns, right? Then grid template rows, which is it's going to be auto, then one frame of each and auto. Save it. Okay, so I think that is an issue. Ooh, ooh. There, header only, sidebar, and it is not coming in the way which I was um header nav main, header nav main. Okay, everything is fine, but why it's not working? All right, so let's try to style the box. Let's say box which is going to be width as 100%. Otherwise, let's say the background color, background which is going to be gray. Okay, so now it's working. So it is working. So without the background color, we couldn't understand what does it happening. So let's give the 20 pixels. Now we can see the differentiations, right? So this is what we wanted exactly over here. Okay, so we need to have three different rows. So that is what we had. And we need to have two different columns. So let's break this into, okay, so we need to have two different, so first columns it's going to be pixels, 200 pixels, otherwise we can keep it as one frame itself. Now we can see we have the two equal columns in the center. Instead of keeping it as a 200 pixels, we changed it into one frame. So now we have header and sidebar main, and we have the footer. Otherwise what you can do is instead of keeping it as a one frame, I can keep it as like 300 pixels. So that's how the sidebar size will looks like. So the height will be stretched out as accordingly. So you can customize the layout as much as you want. So for the box, once you added some background colors and everything, you can see the difference. Initially it was working and now quickly, which is exactly wanted, how we wanted it, right? So this is how it will work. Okay. So yep. So if in case, if you want to keep what to say, if you want to keep a responsive, if you want to keep a responsive grid template in that situation, what you can do is, I'm going to comment this one and I'm going to bring this. So now I can see that. Okay. So instead of these the column spans and everything, so I'm going to comment this out. So now we have this. So what I'm going to do is otherwise let's keep it in this way. I'm just going to say repeat auto fit minimum max function. We're going to use the min max function. Minimum, which is going to be the 200 pixels, and maximum, which is going to be the one frame. Save it. And okay, so this is how it looks. Okay, the reason is because we set the minimum pixels as 200 pixels, so that's the reason it's taking. And you can see it's trying to create a responsive design in that. If you don't want this item span, now you should be able to see that it is trying to create some response design over there. See, it's working perfectly as it's supposed to be. So we created a responsive grid system. As much the number of columns is shrinks, it's trying to take the complete available width over there. All right. So which in case is working perfectly as we wanted. So this is all about the grid basics stuff. So just exactly using the same website where you learn the Flexbox, you can learn the grid systems as well as, right? All right then. So we understand, we finished the basic stuffs which we want to learn. So now let's go ahead and start working on the UI part by using all these positionings, pixels and everything. All right, so let's move on to that.